Before I begin this video, I'm just going to say if you haven't already, do check out Dr. Stone as soon as possible because this manga is fucking awesome. It's funny as hell and has a very interesting story so far, even though the manga is only 21 chapters in at the time of me making this video. So anyway, without me having to ramble on for too much longer, let's just get right into this week's review. This week we see how hard everybody's working in order to further develop the science progress, which could then be of great help to the villagers, and the one help that they actually need is a way of curing Ruri. Because before this chapter we did not really understand why Ruri was such a big deal to the village, but in this chapter we had something pretty interesting revealed to us, and that was the fact that the villagers know about some kind of story known as the Momotaru, and Senku actually recognizes this story, except to him this is a very different story than what it is to the village. To the villagers, the Momotaru is actually the type of story which tells of various beasts, all of which don't exist in the area they're currently in, and it also explains how dangerous they are, so that if they were to actually see these animals in the flesh one day, they would know how dangerous and deadly they could be. So the person who passed on these stories originally clearly had an agenda in mind, a long-term way of keeping the people aware of the danger level of certain animals, just in case they somehow ended up meeting one of these animals sometime in the future. And I could see this happening, well, at least the possibility of it happening, because Senku and Taiju ran into tigers, which shouldn't exist in the area that they are in either, but they seemingly did anyway. Most likely they originally ended up coming there from a zoo or something similar. So animals like gorillas, crocodiles, and whatever more animals the Momotaru tells of could also exist even if no one has seen them yet. I mean, all of the animals being described were animals that you would typically find in a zoo, so I don't really think it's the case of if they will end up coming around, but rather when they would show up, and hopefully when that time comes, Senku will have helped them enough with scientific stuff so that they may be able to fend for themselves without actually needing him to pull off something crazy. Now to Senku, the Momotaru is something very different. He recognizes the Momotaru from video games actually, and that's where the chapter took a pretty interesting turn, because we get to see how elements from a video game is actually turning into stories of great importance in terms of survivability among other things. So the person who passed on this information originally must have figured that one day they might need to know how to handle certain scenarios, and that it was in everybody's interest if he actually taught them in the only way he could think of at the time. He was probably a gamer based on what Senku said the Momotaru came from, so he just twisted up some stories based on Monster Hunter and Dragon Quest, as I believe those were the games that Senku said was related to the story of the Momotaru, and the one actually telling these stories in the present is Ruri, who is the sister of Kohaku and is very ill at the moment. So now Senku actually has one more reason to get down to business and try and procure some antibiotics for Ruri, because he's going to want to know just who told these stories originally. I mean, Ruri most likely did hear them from someone who's potentially no longer with them, and if that is the case, then her title as priestess, because I'm pretty sure they referred to her as a priestess, I think that is based on who holds this knowledge of the stories of the Momotaru. Like, it would make sense, who's to say they revere a god? If the founder of this village was well acquainted with Monster Hunter and Dragon Quest, then he was probably a gamer. And while this doesn't have to be the case, he was probably a non-believer, which means that these people might not even have a concept of a god, or at the very least been taught that a god doesn't exist, and instead the priestess refers to someone who preserves something extremely important to the village, and that just might be Ruri's ability to share these stories. So whenever someone else becomes priestess, they will have learned and memorized all of these stories as well. Another thing that we did see is that they're going to have to increase their manpower before they can make iron, but because the villagers are so reluctant when it comes to newcomers, it will not be the easiest thing to get more people, because as Senku pretty much said, it may be possible to win over some people through impressing them, but they actually do have a trump card at the moment, which is a kid with a fruit looking thing as a helmet, Suika. I'm guessing Senku intends to use Suika as an inside man in the village, and what I mean by that is that villagers probably won't trust Senku and the ones swayed so easily by his science, but Suika sneaked out of the village, so they don't really know that Suika has been with them this whole time. So if Suika can actually try to come up with something that will make more people trust Senku and his ways of speedrunning the history of science, then Senku might get the manpower he needs to actually make iron, and after iron there's even more to it. One last thing that I'm guessing they could use is that Senku actually knows how to help Ruri, but it will take people to reach that, because he openly told everyone who was around him that the cure for her illness, that is antibiotics, was founded very recently to the era that Senku was born in, which is a very big step from where they are right now, so it's going to take a lot of effort effort to get Ruri's illness cured. And they may need to act fast depending on how much time she actually has left. Anyway, I'll be ending the video here. Let me know what you think down below in the comments. And as always, if you did, please like this video. If you enjoyed, and subscribe if you're new to my channel. This has been your favorite host, Perm, and I'll see you soon.